So our next really special guests here with us today are about to share their personal stories with you. Jan Boucher is certified in diabetes outpatient education. She worked as a school nurse teacher for 26 years at the elementary level. She retired 4 years ago to help with her grandchildren and especially her granddaughter who has type 1 diabetes. Emilie Gordon is an 8th grader at Lincoln Middle School. She was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes at the age of 17 months. From a very young age, Emilie has been involved in advocating for a cure and educating others. At the age of 4, she was the youngest participant in the JDRF's 2011 Children's Congress in Washington, D.C. Amazing. She has been active in the Promise to Remember Me campaign, both in Rhode Island and in Washington, where she met with representatives to help secure funding for diabetes research. She has also been involved in delivering bags of hope to newly diagnosed children. Gwen McNulty is an 8th grader at Lincoln Middle School. She was diagnosed with type 1 in September of 2018. Although recently diagnosed, she was already familiar with the disease because her dad also has type 1, and he's had it since childhood. Gwen's many talents include playing piano, guitar, being a dancer, participating in Girl Scouts as a cadet. Diabetes clearly hasn't slowed her down. She is a seasoned and talented Irish step dancer performing in multiple events. Since her diagnosis, Gwen has tackled type 1 head-on, actively taking on the management of it and learning how to balance it as she pursues her talents. And Sydney Cooper is a senior at URI. She graduated from South Kingston High School in 2017. She has held various jobs since her freshman year and is now the activities director at Camp Surefire. Sydney also has type 1. I'm so honored to welcome all of you to the stage this morning, and we're really interested to hear each one of your perspectives as you've walked this journey. So I'll turn it over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and welcome to our session. This is an extremely important presentation, I feel, for those people with type 1. It's going to be on social stigma and type 1 diabetes. So just let's begin by thinking about a couple of questions. First of all, is social stigma a challenge for people with type 1 diabetes? Does it affect their parents as well? And what do we even mean by social stigma? So we're going to actually look at those answers in the form of a question. If you are a person with type 1 diabetes, have you ever been excluded from an event or an activity, such as a sleepover? Maybe your friend is having a birthday celebration with a sleepover after. You get to participate in the birthday celebration, but you don't get to participate in the sleepover because no one is there to oversee your diabetes management. Have you ever been excluded from a summer camp for the same reason, or a field trip or an extracurricular activity? Have you ever been excluded from a particular type of food? A lot of people in the general public believe that as long as you have a sugar-free food, it's okay. So have you ever been excluded from any type of food? Have you ever been told that you cannot participate in an activity, a before school activity, an after school activity? Have you ever been made to feel that you are different? And if you are a parent of a child with type 1 diabetes, have you ever been persuaded to have your child avoid a particular activity or event? Have you ever witnessed or seen your child being excluded from a food? Have you ever been told that your child cannot participate in a particular activity? Again, before school activity, after school activity? Have you ever been made to feel that you are to blame for your child's diabetes, or that you are not managing your child's diabetes. These are the social judgments, those negative beliefs that society has placed on those people with type 1, as well as their parents, and what we refer to as social stigma. There was actually a study done, a survey done in 2014, which is dated, but many still experience these negative judgments today, where 76% of people with type 1 diabetes said that they feel stigmatized. And 83% of parents of children with type 1 said they feel stigmatized. Those numbers are huge. For the next 20 minutes, 25 minutes, Emilie Gordon, Gwen McNulty, Sydney Cooper, and I are actually going to discuss different aspects of social stigma and type 1 diabetes. I'm going to have Em and Gwen go first, and then they can hand it over to Sydney. Em?
Sorry about that. My name is Emilie Gordon. I'm 14 years old. I've been diagnosed with diabetes since I was 17 months old, which is almost 12 years now. I haven't done anything besides diabetes, which comes with its pros and cons. Some of the pros are that I've met really cool people like Nurse Jan. I've got to have snacks in class, and I've gotten to cut lines at Canterbury Lake Park, which I highly recommend. Some of the cons are that it has affected every stage of my life, and people are always there, especially my mother. I've never been allowed to just be a kid on my own, which you can imagine is very hard. When I was younger, it was very socially isolating, and I couldn't do normal kid stuff like go to sleepovers. And one particular event was when I was at a sleepover at a friend's house, and my mother came throughout the night, and the alarms were going off. Other girls didn't know what was going on. It was very embarrassing, and even though she did leave for most of the night, she had to come back in the morning for breakfast. It was kind of an invasion of privacy for the other girls and for my mom, although she didn't mean any harm. She just was trying to help me, and that's kind of hard for other people to understand. So it was kind of isolating throughout my life. And when I entered middle school, it was still an issue. There was one field trip when I went to Borndale. All the sixth graders, it was kind of like an independence thing where you would go and for 3 days away from your parents, and you'd kind of just, it was a symbol of independence. But not for me, because diabetes followed me onto the bus there, and it was there all the way until the end of the field trip. As I got older, it's now easier to manage. I'm on the T-Slim pump and the Dexcom 6. I don't have to check as much, but there are still alarms, so there is that. But I met Gwen, and I learned that there's more to me than type 1 diabetes, like art and music. As I enter high school, there is still social stigma, like how to handle parties, driving, and meeting new people. But some of the advice would be to keep your head high and don't be too hard on yourself.
Right. My name is Gwyneth, Gwen for short. I've had type 1 diabetes for the past 2 years. My favorite color is lavender, and I've played the piano for about 6 years, and I played the guitar for about 4 months. I've been dancing for a long time. Ever since I was little, I went to the Cayley School of Dance, and then I quit. For some reason, I forget why. And then I joined Canada. So with type 1 diabetes, I have to set a temp basal, and I have to eat certain foods before and after dance, depending on my sugar. So it's a bit hard because I have to sit out sometimes. And lately I've had to sit up a lot, even with virtual dancing, because sometimes, me being me, I forget to set my temp basal and I shoot downward. So I've sit out for about half the class. Some pros to sitting out is that I get to drink juice. Drinking juice is always fun. I didn't get to do that much. But I mean, otherwise, diabetes is fairly manageable. It's hard but easy at the same time. You can do certain things to make it better for yourself. Certain foods that I like sometimes are like crackers and cheese, and drinks are Crystal Light. Crystal Light's the best. It's sugar-free mostly, but like you can have certain carbs that can shoot you up super fast, but if you have some protein with it, it makes it a lot better. Um, a good low drink is juice because it'll shoot you up and keep you steady. Don't drink soda. Don't drink cherry soda. I made that mistake this week. It wasn't good. And yeah, that's all. That's what I have to say. I should have practiced this one.
All right, so I'm just grabbing my phone charger really quick. I got the low power mode thing, so I'm doing that, sorry. All right. So my name is Sydney Cooper, and I've had diabetes for over 11 years now. I'll have it for 12 in February. And I got diagnosed at age 10, so a little later in life, and no one else in my family had been diagnosed before. So it was a little bit of a shock and a little bit of an adjustment for all of us, which is a little bit different because sometimes a lot of people will have family members or someone else in their family with diabetes because it is hereditary, but I didn't. So I was new to the process, and I really from after 3 months in, I was like, I want to do it all myself. I really chose to be super independent with my diabetes. I wanted to take all my shots myself. I didn't really like visiting the nurse because it took away from my class, and I think that was part of the social stigma. I didn't like having to go and exclude myself to go do these things for diabetes. So after elementary school and I got to middle school, I really didn't visit any nurses. I had a note from my doctors saying I could be an independent diabetic, doing everything on my own. Unless I needed to go down to the nurse, I had everything there that I needed in case of emergency. But that really definitely affected my social life in the sense that I hid my diabetes from a lot of people. I didn't really like to show that I was a diabetic because of that initial judgment that people had. Maybe it was silent, maybe they said it out loud that they didn't want me there because I was a diabetic, but it was always there in the background. So that definitely was a part of why I chose to be so independent. I really wanted everyone to see like it really didn't affect me. I didn't want it to affect me, but it did. And some of the things that did affect me were, like I said, I would try and hide it. So with the pump, I would always put it in places where you couldn't see. I'd hide it on the inside of my clothing just because I didn't want people to know. Or I would even go to the bathroom to take my insulin or things like that. And I even switched to insulin injections instead of the pump because it was easier to hide. But all of those things I've learned, it really doesn't matter. People will judge you no matter what, and you really have to accept yourself. And that really just takes time with being a diabetic. If you don't accept yourself, it's hard for other people to accept you, but there are people out there that will accept you. You just have to find those people. I know that Emilie and Gwen also go to Camp Surefire, and it's such an amazing camp for diabetics. It's such an accepting place. That's one of my happy places. One of the places I learned to accept my diabetes was through camp and through other diabetics showing me and all of that. So I think that's really important for diabetics to have a good support system. And one of the things I think was a really personal thing, and I thought was more applicable to me as an older college student and high school student, was I had this big fear of ending up alone or not being able to date a boy because of my diabetes. And I know that's a little weird to think about, but I'd been told by multiple boys, I don't want to date you because you're diabetic. And it got in my head. And so I had this fear, but again, it was just accepting that and finding the right people, and those people will eventually accept you and you will find those people. So that all those fears are gone now that I've aged and now that I've realized and accepted it. It's still a work in progress. You face stigmas every day. So it's always just going to be there, but we have the people we can lean on. So that's about it.
Perfect. Thank you very much. So I would actually like to talk about and look at how social stigma affects the whole person. We know when a person feels stigmatized, that is judged or criticized, that it affects their personal relationships and certainly their disease management. We also know that it exists for people with type 1, you just heard that, as well as their parents, but it has decreased over the years. Back several years ago, people that had type 1 were excluded from most summer camps, for example, and probably field trips. Many of these frustrations and judgments deal with the misconception and the public has about diabetes, not really understanding the difference between type 1 and type 2. You might hear people say that it's treatable or they have to learn to live with it. These were actually some of the expressions I heard as a school nurse teacher from very educated people, I might add. So unless you live it, most people do not understand the complexity of having type 1, the 24/7. You don't put it to bed at night and wake up and deal with it in the morning. 24/7. Sick days take on a whole new meaning with a person with type 1 diabetes. That physical and emotional toll of having diabetes or caring for someone who has. So what is your role? What is our role? Our role as a professional, as a community, and as a society. And the best way to overcome stigma is to educate, advocate, demonstrate, and support. So we're going to look at each one of these quickly. And to educate, work with your healthcare team, your endocrinologist, your CDOE, your primary care physician, those people that comprise your healthcare team. Learn as much as you possibly can about diabetes. Understand that this does evolve over time. It's a huge learning curve and it's always ongoing. Also know that it's individualized. What works for one may not work for another. I had to learn that firsthand. I have a granddaughter who is also type 1 diabetes, has type 1 diabetes. And from working with the students at school, they use this mode of treatment for a low. I thought I could use the same thing for my granddaughter, and boy, that certainly backfired. That did not work well for her at all. So it was certainly a learning curve for me, just knowing how individualized this disease certainly can be. Educate yourself with the laws. Your child is entitled to a 504, for example, because they have diabetes. And obviously the community, that entire community, what you can get out of the community, what you give back to the community is a huge piece. Advocate. You know your child better than anyone. Do not be intimidated by a person's title. It doesn't matter if that title is MD or CDOE or principal of the building, school nurse teacher, RN, director of a facility. It does not matter. You know your child better than anyone. Talk to your child about their diabetes and their feelings. If you don't, they will get their information from someone or somewhere else. And absolutely speak up on their behalf. Demonstrate. Use your experience and your knowledge to educate others. There are different ways to demonstrate. Certainly you can demonstrate by advocating, but you can also demonstrate by showing and explaining. Maybe post or have a folder with hypo and hyperglycemic symptoms for your child. Type up the directions if your child is on an insulin pump or a CGM. I used to appreciate it when the parents would type up the directions to the insulin pump or the CGM, not because I was responsible for changing them, but it certainly increased my knowledge base and it certainly helped with any troubleshooting that needed to take place. Maybe begin the school year, especially for the early elementary years, begin the school year with a class discussion. There were many, many books. Taking Diabetes to School is just an example, but you would be amazed at the support that your child can get from their classmates and their peers. That is, if your child is receptive to this and the school or the facility is also receptive. And another way would be, I know my granddaughter has a CGM and they pair it to a tablet, and that tablet is all color coded. They have the tablets at their house. I have tablets here at my house. There's a tablet at school. And it's really helpful if my granddaughter is doing an assessment at school, for example. The teacher can just look up at the color. Oh, she's green, she's in the green zone. That's a good number to be at. Versus, oh, her number is showing on the screen. I've got to look up to see if that's a decent number or not. And absolutely support. Get names of other type 1 families. Obviously, with HIPAA, the healthcare team, the schools cannot hand that information to you, but you can get your information to them so that they can contact you. You would be absolutely amazed at the resources and the support that you can get that way. And social media groups with common interests, social media is a wonderful way for you to reach out and gain that support from other people that are going through the same thing. And it doesn't matter if you type in or you go on a social media group thinking about an insulin pump or was interested in looping, you would be absolutely amazed at the support that you get from other people. So I guess bottom line is certainly don't hesitate to reach out for that support, but also don't hesitate to reach out and offer that support to others. And I'm glad Sydney had mentioned Camp Surefire for the kids. Camp Surefire, I cannot say enough about either. It is absolutely phenomenal, yes, with the kids and the support that the kids need. So in conclusion, we know social stigma certainly does exist for parents as well as the children with type 1. We know it's less now than it has been in the past, that it's this evolving journey, if you will, but that the diabetes community has absolutely amazing, phenomenal support. Find your people and use it. We all need to continue to educate, to advocate, and demonstrate to continue to reduce the negative challenges type 1 people face. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jan, Emily, Gwen, Sydney, for sharing your personal stories and helping Rhode Islanders to understand what it's like to live with diabetes. You're all so amazing in the work that you do, both to keep yourselves motivated on a daily basis as you walk your journey, as well as supporting others. So thank you so much for everything that you're doing, for your time today on a Saturday morning. Really, truly appreciate it. And I just wanted to share with you, if you didn't see that one comment came in from the chat from Anna Bertarelli. Hi, Emily, Gwen, and Sydney. Thank you for your courage to speak today. So proud of all that you do. Glad Camp Surefire has been a safe zone. Please be certain to listen to Anna Florine Sabino today. So if you have the ability to log on later, if you go to riwdd.org, that should let you know what time Anna Sabino is going to be speaking later on today. So any other questions from the audience, feel free to type them into the chat. Any other comments? Obviously, we're a little over time, but we want to make sure that we address your questions as well. Certainly, feelings around stigma, having slip-ups, as we heard from our speakers, they happen to all of us. So don't feel like you're alone. If you have pre-diabetes or type 2 even, these guys can certainly answer questions that you have because it's all related, really. We have another note that just came in. Hi, Sydney, Emily, Gwen, I like hearing you talk. It makes me proud. Love, Ava, age 9. Awesome. And can you guys see the chat? Great. To the students, do your friends support your diabetes? Can you answer that question?
I would say I have found that my true friends support my diabetes through and through. And then I have, those acquaintances or less of a real friend that I would just hang out with maybe a few nights, maybe not now because of COVID, but back then when we could hang out all the time, I would hang out with those friends, but they would just be a little less accepting or a little less inquisitive. If they don't ask as many questions, maybe they don't care as much, they kind of just roll it off. They don't really acknowledge the diabetes, which I would consider maybe is a little less supportive as I would like, but they don't really make fun or anything. It's really just those real true friends support and ask questions and want to know all about it. And I don't know if you find that the same, Emily and Gwen, that everyone who really is your true friend wants to know everything about your diabetes so they can help in a situation.
Emily, Gwen, do you have anything to add?
So in my dance school personally, my dance teacher is so amazing about this. Before the summer solstice festival last year, she stood up and she told the whole school, just in case something went wrong. They were very nice about it. My friends there are very great about it. They asked a couple questions. And I mean, Emily has diabetes, so she knows all about it. She was very supportive. She was probably like one of the first people to like talk. So thanks for that, by the way. Yeah, that's it for me.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. You know, as someone myself who lives with chronic conditions, I found it validating and supportive to have that listening ear. It's really helpful when you have that supportive community. Doesn't take many people, but certainly a few to just help you walk on your journey. I found extremely helpful as well. Thank you all so much for such an inspiring presentation today.